So, what is the Carolingian dynasty and how did that come about?
So after some time, the power of the Merovingian kings is really attenuated. Um, and the people who are more or less running the show are the mayors of the palace, which you can kind of interpret here like as major domo, but that or maitre d', right? But that makes you think about restaurants or hotel staff, and that's not what's going on. But they're the people who ran sort of the royal estate to what extent there was. They command the armies. There's a guy named Charles Martel. So
Hmm.
the word Charles is Carolus in Latin. Carolingian comes from him and perhaps also his more famous grandson, Charlemagne, Charles the Great. But that's the Carolingians, right? So they're the family of Charles, the family of Charles Martel. He is the military leader. He famously wins an important, if not as important as Edward Gibbon says, battle fighting against a raiding force out of Al-Andalus, the Iberia, the Islamic kingdoms of Iberia, around the city of Tours, which is, driving, it's only an hour or so south of Paris, so it's pretty far in there. Um, but also he's very good at playing the power politics of the region, backing some nobles, fighting other nobles, working with some Islamic rulers, working against some Christian rulers, and building a power base more directly focused around him. And when the Merovingian king dies, he doesn't really see the need to replace them. And then his son comes around in the 750 or so. And the story that we're told is that the Merovingian kings, no one cared about them. They had no power. They just had sort of long hair and rode around in a cart and did parade and wave, sort of like the English monarchy, right? They did
Yeah.
ribbon cuttings, things like that. But that Pepin, Charles Martel's son, was really the guy running the place, and Pepin just said, I think I'll be king. And he said, "Hey, Pope, can I be king?" The Pope said, "Sure," and got him anointed in the style of the Old Testament kings. And the Merovingians really happily went off to a monastery.
Yeah, so
But,
Charles Martel
but
wasn't a king, but he
no,
acted
Charles
like
Martel
one.
is not a
Yeah.
king. He was running the place, but he wasn't a king. The thing about these titles
Yeah.
is they only mean something if they mean something, right? They don't. When you become president, this is a couple days before the election, right? At least in theory, certain kind of powers accrue to you as a person because of the office. That is just not the case with the title king. The powers come that you can claim, that you can make work. And especially in these early medieval periods, there's a lot of importance in the title, but it's not like Charles Martel gave an order and someone said, "Oh no, you don't have the title king. We're not going to listen." This is not how it worked. But what I wanted to say is there's this story, this legend of the Carolingian dynasty that everyone basically just kind of agreed that Pepin should be king, and that was that. There's the main source we have for this is something called the Royal Frankish Annals. And they start around this time. And the job of an annal, ANNAL, is just to record what happens every year. That is its one job. To say in the year 747, this happened. In the year 748, this happened. And they make selections, and sometimes it's more about crops and agriculture and comets and things, and sometimes it's more about the death of important figures or whatever it is, depending on where it's written. Somehow, for the years right when Pepin takes power, we do not have those years in the annals.
How
Now,
convenient.
it could be just that they forgot to write them or that only those years didn't survive. But my co-author Matt and I, we think that instead what's happening is that this was not a bloodless coup, that there is bloodshed and violence right at the founding of the Carolingian order, or the Carolingian dynasty when they take over this territory, and that they immediately wanted to not talk about it. So flash
Uh,
forward almost 100 years, and we have the Civil War we're talking about in Oathbreakers between the grandsons of Charlemagne, so the great great grandsons of Charles Martel. And in the 840s, everyone writing about it is like, oh, how could this happen? It's all so sudden. We had such a stable empire. The Franks are chosen by God. We're the new Israelites. How could things be falling apart? And one of our arguments is that, look, it's been falling apart since day one. It's been falling apart since this bloody coup, and you knew it, which is why you tried to not talk about it. There's another coup against Charlemagne in 792. That one too, they try to not talk about it. There are coups against Louis the Pious, so Charlemagne's son and heir, from his own sons in the 830s. Those are harder not to talk about because they're happening at a bigger and bigger scale. But all along the way, we have the Franks saying, "Hey, we are chosen by God. we are the chosen people. To be a Frank is to be a chosen people. We are stable. We are an empire. We are the ones in charge here, and everything is great, while also things never actually being that stable.